Hey guys, happy Friday. I just woke up from a nap. My allergies are still acting up a little bit, so I took a nap today, and it actually did help, so that's good. We went into the school today and collected some of your belongings that of those of you who reached out to us and wanted us to give some things to you, or you left stuff in the classroom. We will be back on Wednesday to create and stuff some more packets. So that's good, and they will go out at the beginning of May. We don't have a time yet, but that email and all that information will come soon. Thank you for those who have posted in the document of the work that you've been doing, or emailed me, or sent me pictures. That's awesome. And it's really good to get those updates from you, and it just helps make mine and Miss Nestor and your other teacher's life a lot easier when we see that actual work. I loved getting messages from you guys yesterday about the cliffhanger that we left on and how frustrated you were. So I know you're probably anxiously awaiting for this video to come out to read the next chapter. I will say, Tanner Green did not give me the nickname the cliffhanger for nothing. I like to stop on those cliffhangers. I like to have that engagement and that excitement. I like to have you guys think about what's going to happen next before we move on from reading. So, Anne-Marie was just stopped by soldiers and some dogs on leashes as she's trying to get a basket full of bread and cheese and an apple, as well as a packet of information that she does not know what's in it, to her Uncle Henrik. So let's see. Chapter 15 is called My Dogs Smell Meat. Anne-Marie's mind raced. She remembered what her mother had said. If anyone stops you, you must pretend to be nothing more than a silly little girl. She stared at the soldiers, and she remembered how she had stared at the others, frightened, when they had stopped her on the street the first time. Christy hadn't been frightened. Christy had been, well, nothing more than a silly little girl, angered because the soldiers had touched her hair. That afternoon, she had known nothing of danger, and the soldier had been amused by her. Anne-Marie willed herself with all of her being to behave as Christy would. "Good morning," she said carefully to the soldiers. They looked her up and down in silence. Both dogs were tense and alert. The two soldiers who held the leashes wore thick gloves. "What are you doing here?" one of them asked. Anne-Marie held out her basket with the thick loaf of bread visible. "My Uncle Henrik forgot his lunch, and I'm taking it to him. He is a fisherman." The soldiers were looking around. Their eyes glanced behind her and scanned the bushes on either side. "Are you alone?" one asked. Anne-Marie nodded. "Yes," she said. One of the dogs growled, but she noticed that both dogs were looking at her lunch basket. One soldier stepped forward. The other and the two holding the dogs remained where they were. "You came out before daybreak just to bring lunch? Why doesn't your uncle eat fish?" What would Christy's reply be? Anne-Marie tried to giggle, the way that her sister might. "Uncle Henrik doesn't even like fish," she said, laughing. "He says he sees too much of it and smells too much of it. Anyway, he wouldn't eat it raw." She made a face. "Well, I suppose he would if he were starving, but Uncle Henrik always has bread and cheese for lunch." "Keep chattering," she told herself, as Christy would, a silly little girl. "I like fish," she went on. "I like the way my mother cooks it. Sometimes she rolls it in breadcrumbs, and..." The soldier reached forward and grabbed the crisp loaf of bread from the basket. He examined it carefully, then broke it in half, pulling the two halves apart in his fists. That would enrage Christy. "Don't!" she said, angry. "That's Uncle Henrik's bread. My mother baked it." The soldier ignored her. He tossed the two halves of the loaf to the ground, 1 inch from each of the dogs. They consumed it, snapping at the bread and gulping it so that it was gone in an instant. "Have you ever seen anyone in the woods?" The soldier barked a question at her. "No, only you." Anne-Marie stared at him. "What are you doing in the woods anyway? You're making me late. Uncle Henrik's boat will leave before I get there with his lunch, or what's left of his lunch." The soldier picked up the wedge of cheese and turned it over in his hand. He turned to the three behind him and asked them something in their own language. One of them answered 9 in a bored tone. Anne-Marie recognized the word. The man had replied no. He had probably been asking Anne-Marie, thought, do you want this? Or perhaps, should I give this to the dogs? The soldier continued to hold the cheese, and then he tossed it back and forth between his hands. Anne-Marie gave an exasperated sigh. Could I go now, please? She said impatiently. The soldier reached for the apple. He noted its brown spots and made a face of disgust. No meat, he said, glancing at the basket and the napkin laying at its bottom. Anne-Marie gave him a withering look. You know we have no meat, she said innocently. Your army eats all of Denmark's meat. Please, please, she implored in her mind, don't lift the napkin. The soldier laughed. He dropped the bruised apple on the ground. One of the dogs leaned forward, pulling at its leash, sniffed the apple, and stepped back. But both dogs looked intently on the basket, their ears alert, their mouths open. Saliva glistened on their smooth pink gums. My dogs smell meat, the soldier said. They smell squirrels in the woods, Anne-Marie responded. You should take them hunting. The soldier reached forward with the cheese in one hand as if he was going to return it from the basket, but instead he pulled out the flowered cotton napkin. Anne-Marie froze. Your uncle has a pretty little lunch, the soldier said scornfully. Crumpling the napkin around the cheese in his hand. Like a woman, he added with contempt. Then his eyes locked on the basket. He handed the cheese to the napkin to the soldier beside him. What's that? There in the bottom, he asked. In a different, tenser voice. What would Christy do? Anne-Marie stamped her foot suddenly. To her own surprise, she began to cry. I don't know, she said, her voice cracked. My mother's going to be angry that you stopped me and made me late, and you've completely ruined my Uncle Henrik's lunch, so now he'll be mad at me too. The dogs whined and struggled against the leashes, nosing forward to the basket. One of the other soldiers muttered something in German. The soldier took out the packet. Why was this so carefully hidden? He snapped. Anne-Marie wiped her eyes on the sleeve of her sweater. It wasn't hidden any more than that napkin was. I don't know what it is. Then she realized that was true. She had no idea what was in the packet. The soldier tore the paper open while below him on the ground the dogs strained in snarls, pulling against their leashes. Their muscles were visible beneath the sleek, short-haired flesh. He looked inside, then glared at Anne-Marie. Stop crying, you idiot girl, he said harshly. Your stupid mother has sent your uncle a handkerchief. In Germany, the women have better things to do. They don't stay home hemming handkerchiefs for their men. He gestured with the folded white cloth and gave a short, caustic laugh. At least she didn't stitch flowers on it. He flung it to the ground with still half wrapped in the paper beside the apple. The dogs lunged, sniffed at it eagerly, and then subsided, disappointed again. Go on, the soldier said. He dropped the cheese and the napkin back into her basket. Go on to your uncle and tell him the German dogs enjoyed his bread. All of the soldiers pushed past her. One of them laughed, and they spoke to each other in their own language. In a moment, they had disappeared down the path in the direction from which Anne-Marie had just come. Quickly, she picked up the apple and opened the packet with the white handkerchief inside. She put them into the basket and ran around the bend toward the harbor, where the morning sky was now bright with sun early, and some of the boat engines were starting their strident din. The Ingeborg was still there by the dock, and Uncle Henrik was there, his light hair wind-blown and bright as he knelt on the nets. Anne-Marie called to him, and he came to the side, his face worried when he recognized her on the dock. She handed the basket. Mama sent your lunch, she said, her voice quavering. But the soldiers stopped me and they took your bread. She didn't dare tell him more. He glanced quickly into the basket. She could see the look of relief on his face and knew that it was because he saw the packet was there, even though it was torn open. Thank you, he said, and the relief was evident in his voice. Anne-Marie looked quickly around the familiar small boat. She could see down the passageway into the empty cabin. There was no sign of the Rosens or the others. Uncle Henrik followed her eyes and her puzzled look. All is well, he said softly. Don't worry, everything is all right. I wasn't sure, he said, but now he eyed the basket in his hands. Because of you, Anne-Marie, everything is all right. You run home now and tell your mama not to worry. I will see you this evening. He grinned at her suddenly. They took my bread, eh? He said. I hope they choke on it. And that is what that's where I'm going to end today. So, luckily, Amory made it safely to Uncle Henrik. We found out there was some sort of handkerchief in the envelope. We don't really know the significance or the importance of that, but we do know that everything got to where it needed to be. So we'll have to see what happens when Uncle Henrik comes back that evening, and what message he has to bring if he comes back. I hope you guys have a great weekend. I know it's supposed to be nicer tomorrow and Sunday than it was today, so get outside, do something fun. Continue to check in with us. I will not be responding to parent emails or text messages this weekend. It was really nice to turn off that last weekend. So after 4 o'clock today, I won't respond until Monday morning. So you can still email me. You can still send me text messages on Remind, whatever need be. But I won't respond back until Monday morning. So I hope you guys have a great weekend. I hope you're staying safe and staying healthy. I love and miss you a ton. Bye.